Hey guys, welcome. So excited to do this live. Actually, no, I am not excited to do this live video at all. Not excited about this one. This is probably one of my least favorite topics to talk about. And we're talking about, just so that we're all clear of how painful this topic is, how to trust again after a bad relationship. Oh, I really don't like this topic. I really do not want to talk about this, but it was a requested topic. And so here we are. If you're new here, this is going to be a bumpy ride for all of us, but we will get through this. I'm curious who here has been through a bad relationship where trust has been broken. I'm very curious. So if you are new here, welcome. Make sure that you subscribe. We talk about everything from boundaries to relationships to communication to attraction. So this is a place you want to be. So make sure that you subscribe. All right. So here's an interesting thing. Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his work. He is probably one of the most brilliant minds that we have right now. Like he's one of those greats that I believe history books will write about this guy. He's kind of like the Freud of our time. The man's wisdom is just mind-boggling. And so this is why I am really reluctant to cover this topic, but it is requested. And it's based off of something that Jordan Peterson says. He says that in his experience, that betrayal is one of the most difficult things for a human being to come back from, if not impossible. I'm going to say that again, and I'm not quoting him verbatim. God forbid someone sent him this and he goes, I didn't say that. And I'm going to go, oh shit. But what he says, what I'm pretty confident he says is that betrayal is one of the most difficult experiences for a human to encounter. And in some situations, almost impossible to recover from. So when you have come from a bad relationship and then you want to go into a new relationship, I'm going to tell you why this is so difficult. Because here's the thing. Our society tells us to villainize the other person. They were an asshole. They were a liar. They were a cheater. They were a narcissist. They were a gaslighter. They were selfish. They were abusive. They were crazy. Like, we are so good in our society at villainizing the other person. And we think this is why, and let me just explain it this way. You want to pay attention to this and you want to stay to the very end, because I'm going to give you some practical ways to walk through this. I have personally had to go through this myself, and it's not easy. So let me just validate you. If you were in this situation and you were beating yourself up and you're going, I came from a really bad relationship and now I'm trying to do a healthy relationship and it's hard. Hell yeah, it's hard. And you're not alone in that. And sometimes it's just, I love that Dr. Brene Brown, she's from Texas. She says that sometimes naming the emotion is the beginning of the healing process. So when you've been through betrayal, when you've been through abuse, when you've gone through a bad relationship, like these are the things that we qualify as a bad relationship. When you've gone through that, it does create a tear within one's heart. It does create a fracture, a fragment in the heart, a fracture in the heart. That can be very difficult to recover from. That can be very difficult to come from. And I all too often think if I just get into a new relationship with a better person, that's all going to go away. That's horseshit. It doesn't just go away. Because at the end of the day, when we've had experiences, experiences shape us, experiences teach us, and sometimes they teach us the wrong things. And we need to be really clear on that. When we've come out of a bad relationship, sometimes we learn the wrong things. If you've come out of a relationship with a narcissist, it's that constant game of manipulation. And you start thinking like everyone's going to manipulate me. Everyone's going to lie to me. They're going to play games with me. And so I just got to do the best that I can to keep this pain and this conflict that I'm experiencing under wraps. So the other person, the new relationship, doesn't figure out how crazy I feel on the inside. This is real talk, by the way. This is real talk. So let me go back to what I was saying. Our society, we're really good at villainizing the other person. And we have tons of terms to villainize them. And we think that the more we villainize that bad relationship, that it's going to make it easier for us to go into the next relationship. If we can just put them in that box and say, that was a bad relationship. That person was a bad person. They were a dark person. They had issues. That's going to help us heal. That is the beginning of healing, naming the emotion, saying that this was not an okay experience, that this was a bad relationship. That is the beginning of healing, but it is not the end all be all. And I'll tell you why. This is why it can be so difficult to be able to trust again in a new relationship when you come out of a bad relationship. You think it's because of what the other person has done to you. And that's what makes it so difficult. But that is not what makes it so difficult going into the new relationship. It is the sever that it creates within yourself, because you cannot trust yourself any longer. That's the experience that you have. How could I let this person treat me this way for so long? How could I let this happen? How could I betray myself? How could I lie to myself? How could I compromise? How could I negotiate with myself for so long? I knew this bullshit was going on, and yet I stayed, and yet I put up with it. And then we start making very dangerous promises to ourselves, and we start saying, never again. And when we say that, while it might sound healthy and it might sound like a boundary, it becomes very dangerous, because what we do is we put this armor over ourselves that says, I will protect myself. I will never, ever let myself get hurt like this again. I will never, ever let myself get taken advantage of again. And then you go into the next relationship, and the person is trying to love on you. They're trying to be there in a committed, loving relationship for you. The challenge is that every time they try to love you, guess what they're hitting up against? That armor that you've put on, that shield that you have put on against yourself, that you swore you would use to protect yourself. And that same shield that you use to protect yourself is what keeps love from coming in. Is this making sense to you guys? So what do you do? I think the first thing is to, go through the actual process of naming your experience, naming the emotion. If it was betrayal, saying I was betrayed. If you were abused, saying I was abused. If it was being lied to, I was lied to. If you were manipulated, say you were manipulated. That is the beginning of the healing experience. Like, you have to go through that. You have to name it. You have to acknowledge it. You don't just let it go. You don't just put it under a rug. That is bypassing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, but bypassing is when we downplay an experience and we go, I don't need to feel the emotions. I'm just going to pass it on and I'm going to keep moving. And that is a very cowardly thing to do, because what you're essentially trying to do is not feel the emotion. And so when you don't want to feel the emotion and you try to bypass it and you go, I don't need to feel that. It's fine. It's whatever. I know better than next time. I don't want to feel that. That's being a coward, because at the end of the day, whatever you can't face, you're running from. So the most courageous thing that you can do is feel the heartbreak, feel what they did, put a name to it. I felt betrayed. I felt lied. I felt manipulated. And call out that experience for yourself. Give it a name so that you can heal. But where people get stuck in this process, and why it's so difficult to have a healthy, trusting relationship the next time, is because we park it there. We park it. Thank you for that, Penguin. I appreciate the super chat. He just gave me a $19.99 super chat. I really appreciate that. That means the world to me. I definitely feel appreciated when you guys do the super chats. So thank you. What also happens is people get stuck right there. They villainize the ex. They villainize the unhealthy, the toxic, the narcissistic, the abusive relationship. And that's where they stop. But that's just the beginning, you guys. Pay attention. That is just the beginning. The full spectrum, how you actually heal, how you are actually able to trust again so that you can have a healthy relationship, is by admitting to yourself where you're having a difficult time trusting you again. Because if we get really honest, if we get really quiet on the inside, we will ask ourselves those questions. Why did I stay so long? Why did I let this happen to me? Why did I tolerate this? Why did I second guess myself? And we start going through all of this. And essentially what we are saying below that surface is, I don't trust myself any longer. And if you don't trust yourself, guess what? Guess what, baby doll? You can't trust in the next relationship. You just can't trust them. Because the reality is that you can no longer trust yourself. And that is very difficult to come to terms with. And I know this sounds very somber. I know it sounds very weighty. But if we can really understand this truth, if we can, here's the second thing. If we can sit in the discomfort of that, the discomfort of, I don't feel like I can trust myself. If we can just sit in that, then we can, as one of my girlfriends says, we can begin to alchemize that experience. We can begin to transform. We can shape it. We can mold it. We can build something new out of it so that we don't have to live in the remnants of our past. And the first thing is, you got to get really clear as to why you stayed, why you tolerated it. You know, for some of you, it's like, I never felt love before. So I stayed with that abusive person because sometimes they were loving. And I was addicted to feeling loved by that person. Or some people might struggle with feeling alone and they don't like being alone in life. I stayed in that relationship because I don't like being alone. I hate being alone. So I let them do whatever it was that they did that made it a bad relationship. I let them do that because I don't like to be alone. And only you know why you chose to stay. Sometimes, a lot of people stay because of finances. Financially, it just made sense to stay. So I stayed because of finances. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why? What were you afraid of with the finances? But these are the questions that we need to ask of ourselves so that we can regain trust with ourselves. And the reason why we don't do this is because it's difficult to be honest. It's very easy for us to talk about having boundaries with other people. That's easy. We can talk about that. Sometimes it's difficult to do. But it's a boundary within ourselves of being able to admit to ourselves what was really going on, why we chose to stay, getting really honest, getting really truthful with ourselves. That's the boundary that we need to have within ourselves. Before we want to go creating a new healthy relationship, we need to first ask ourselves why we broke our own boundaries by staying in a bad relationship, why we compromised with ourselves. We need to ask ourselves first and foremost why we broke our boundaries. Because if we don't get those answers, we carry that shield into the next relationship. And we're hoping that they can answer that question for us. Whatever it was that we're not getting honest about, we're hoping that that new person fills the void. And they can't. They just can't. This is why we talk so much about the journey of self-love and valuing yourself and caring for yourself. And listen, these are very easy phrases. These are very easy, intangible concepts to be able to speak about. But the practice in and of itself is challenging. You know, I don't know if you guys saw on my Instagram, but I just went to Amsterdam for the weekend to see my girlfriends. And I was talking to my girlfriends and I had an epiphany over the weekend. And the epiphany was that there's still parts of me that will not allow myself to just go out and play. And so my girlfriend, who is very direct and honest with me, said, Arica, you and I had this conversation 3 years ago in Bali. You're telling me nothing has changed? You're still asking the same question? And it's like, ooh, ouch, yikes. Yeah, I am. That's okay. Thank you for that reflection. Thank you for that feedback. Thank you for that honesty. I needed that. But it's like it's listening to those boundaries of self-love. Do I allow myself to rest? Do I allow myself to play? Like, am I taking care of myself, or am I still hoping that somebody else is going to give me that experience? That's trusting yourself. When you say you're going to do something for yourself, following through and doing that, that's loving yourself. That's valuing yourself. That's how you build yourself back up when you come out of a bad relationship and you feel depleted and you feel like your self-worth is hanging on by threads. As you deposit back into you, you love you. You see your therapist. You see your coach. You watch YouTubes. You do meditations. You do the things. You see a counselor. You do the things to restore and repair you. So how do you trust again in a new relationship? I really didn't want to cover this topic because it is such a heavy topic. But the real answer is by trusting in yourself. Again, we always think it's about the other person. We always think like that other person is going to make our life better. They're going to make us happier. They're going to, they're going to redeem that part that was crushed by another person. And we can. I don't want to like go too far into self-love where we devalue what we as human beings can do for one another. Because listen, at the end of the day, there's so much self-love that you can give to yourself, but then that becomes a coping mechanism to never allow people in. I always say, like, the quickest way to growing up and growing who you are, get in a damn relationship. Like, when you're in a relationship, it's a constant mirror in your face that you can't escape. It's suffocating. It's just like there's this person always in your face and you can't run away from yourself. But when you're doing self-love as a single person, you can think you're like the next thing as fresh bread on a Sunday morning. You're like, I'm just so great and I'm so wonderful. I'm like, yeah, sure you are. Get in a relationship. Have that person mirror you, and then you start seeing your oh shits. And you're like, damn, I thought I was so much further. And then you get that mirror and you're like, God darn it. Um, so you trust again in a new relationship by trusting yourself. You trust yourself by being honest with yourself. I think that we are so good at lying to ourselves and blaming other people. I think our society, man, we are like stellar, top notch deniers, top notch blamers. But the reality is that's still betraying ourselves because we're not giving ourselves the courage to just be very frank, to be very honest with ourselves. You can't trust another person while distrusting yourself. It's impossible. You can't give out what you don't have. Is this making sense to you guys? Now, listen, if you're like, Arica, I hear you and I don't know what the next step is, listen, here's my coaching link. Reach out to me for some coaching. I would love to support you because at the end of the day, we all need support. Listen, don't think this girl's not meeting with her therapist this week. Oh, yes, she is. Like everyone needs someone. And most of the time we wait till it's like too late and then we're in a bunch of trouble. Like that's sometimes what I do. I think we all do. It's like this human reaction that we don't make changes until we're in tons of pain. And then we're like, oh shit, I need to do something or I'm going to lose everything I've worked for. Oh my God, I should address this. And sometimes, for some of you who have left a bad relationship and you get into a new relationship, that becomes your oh shit moment where you're like, all right, I need to reach out to Arica Angelo for some coaching because this isn't getting better. I have this saying that I said, like, when, I love to travel. And so just jumping around from Bali and France and Thailand, I started telling my friends, I said, here's the thing about traveling. Everywhere I go, there I am. And that's why it's so important to trust yourself because it doesn't matter what relationship you get into and it doesn't matter who the person is. I don't care how wonderful they are. I don't care if they're Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Gandhi. I don't care how perfect they are. You are still in the relationship. And if you are distrusting yourself, that's still going to come in this new relationship until you get really hard and honest with yourself about why you stood in the bad relationship that you were in. You cannot start trusting yourself by continuing to lie to yourself. That's asinine. You can't build trust with lies. And we're so worried about other people lying to us when we're lying to our damn selves. So it's being really honest. And then as you start trusting yourself, after you get honest and you start caring for yourself, that's the other thing. Then here's the next part. I've talked about this before. I have videos about it. Then you got to get vulnerable. You got to let that person in the new relationship. You got to tell them what's going on. You can't keep it a secret from them. Because then what happens is if you don't tell them what's going on, they're not stupid. They can see your reactions to things. They can see, when you guard up or when you lash out or when you go quiet or when you disappear. They're not dumb. But if you don't have the courage to be honest with them and say, hey, listen, this was my experience. I'm having some reactions from this past experience that I'm currently working through. And so how it shows up, how it affects our relationship is this. And you know how you react. And as I've shared with you before, the reactions are we either fight or we flight or we fawn or we freeze. So some of us more aggressive types, we're going to fight with the other person. The passive people, they're going to fawn. They're just going to be like, I'm not going to do anything. The other people are just going to freeze and just, And then you got some people, they're just going to run from the relationship. And if you're a real pro, sometimes you can just do all of those together. So you got to bring your partner in. If you are in a new relationship, you got to let them know what's going on. Because listen, you can't build trust in a relationship when there's confusion. And if the other person has no idea what you're going through on the inside, then they're just going to think this person's going hot, they're going cold, they're mad, they're happy, they're lovey, they're pushing me away. Like, and then the person internalizes it. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not the right fit for this person. Maybe, and at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 times it has nothing to do with that other person. It's just your own shit that you're not dealing with. And so listen, I know it's easier to hear advice about like how we can blame other people, how we can make it their problem, how our last relationship was so bad. And listen, some people are just assholes. Like, let's just be honest. Like, if you came from a bad relationship, chances are that person was just an asshole. But they're an asshole that you chose to stay with. And that's where you got to get honest with yourself. Why did you stay with that person? And if you really want to get vulnerable, communicate that in your new relationship. Be like, hey, listen, I'm trying to build some trust with myself here. And I was in this stupid relationship and I stayed because, and let them in. Why did you stay? Let them in on the vulnerability. Don't shut them out. Otherwise, you're building a fake relationship. And then that, like I said, that creates confusion. The other person starts blaming themselves. And then you've got a real mess on your hands. So I'm hoping that this helps you guys out. But yeah, it's definitely not a fun topic. I'd much rather listen to Jordan Peterson cover this than communicate this one myself. But let me just see what you guys said. Hi, Ninja Wolf. Hi, Antonio. Carl says, I really need to listen to this. I'm so glad you're here, darling. Hi, Thomas. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Matt. Hi, Boss Big Mike. Grand Rising today is going to be a great day. Ooh, I wonder what that means. Blair says, hey, Erica, how are you feeling? Well, you know what? Yesterday, after I came back from Amsterdam, I went and jumped in the beach like I was 5 years old, and it was epic. I wish I had done that again today. You're so welcome, Thomas. It's my pleasure. Blair says, I think it's best for most people to be single until they are to be in a relationship. Yeah, I mean, being single, it's like that's that time to start having those hard conversations with you. The challenge is here's the thing. I think a lot of people will say that, oh, just stay single until you're ready for a relationship. I don't know if you're ever ready for a relationship. You can do a lot of self introspection, but when you get in a relationship, like people are going to push your buttons, whether it's your partner, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a family member, whether it's a person on the street who gave you a bad look. People are going to push your buttons, and we can all live these very isolated lives, but we never grow. We never grow up when we're isolated because we just think we're so great because no one's pushing up against our edges. So it's like, yeah, I'm great. I live in this little box. No one ever touches me. No one ever interacts with me. And I'm perfect. And it's like, no, you're just in denial. Like, go out in the real world, get into relationships, let people actually into your life. And then you can see what you're made of. Then you can have that conversation. Hello, Juan. And that's true. I love what Thomas just said. He said, you may not trust yourself going into another relationship. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth in what you're saying. Let's see. Charlie says, but surely you know the new person isn't your ex, but I totally get the armor comment. I mean, yes, obviously you're choosing this person because they're very different from your ex, right? But the one thing that people don't talk about is when you get into a new relationship is in your heart, you still carry those other experiences. I don't care what people say. Oh, yeah, I know it was that person. Now I'm on to that's such bullshit, because when you listen to people talk, let people talk and they'll talk about their old relationship. When they get comfortable with you, you're going to hear about the pain. You're going to hear it's going to come out, or give them a couple of drinks and it's going to come out. Why does it come out? Because it's still inside. And so we need to have safety between one another to be able to be honest about our experiences and how we show up in those. That's really wise. Blair says, or it can lead to self-doubt that leads to self-hatred. That is very true. You guys are saying some really good stuff. Penguin says, I stayed married for 15 years of hell because I didn't want to be alone. Well, guess what? I'm a stronger person once I left. Plus, you helped 100%. Your strong messages are awesome. You changed my life and increased my self-worth. That means the world to me, Penguin. I'm so proud of you for taking the things that I say and making them work, putting them to work in your life. That's when you get the real change. Jason says it would also help to get some counseling for what happened in the past, to let it go. You need someone to listen to us and get information to move forward with ourselves. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that we all need someone. And here's the thing, like I heard from, there was a person in my life that I said, they kept coming to me with some of their challenges. And I said, I think you really need to go see a therapist as opposed to you and I working this out together. And they said, well, why should I see a therapist when I have you? And I said, because at the end of the day, like most of us, we're too close to this situation. When you have a therapist, you have a coach, you have a counselor, they're not emotionally attached to your experience. So they can be objective. They can hold space for you so that you can say every dark thing that you need to say and get it out. And guess what? They're not going to judge you. They're going to create that safe place for you to just air it out. And we do need to get things out as opposed to keeping them in. Derek says, I'm glad that me and my ex-girlfriend are on good terms after our breakup. So happy to have been a couple for 7 months. That is beautiful. I have an ex that we email every year, and just a lovely person. And it was a horrible relationship. But I'm glad that we can at least send emails and have that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, even in that relationship, we had to get honest. We had to apologize to each other for the shit that both of us did. And that's why we're able to have a friendship, is to be able to say, I did this to you and it wasn't okay. And I hurt you and I'm sorry. Thomas says, self-love is doing the things you promise yourself on a daily basis and do them. Not always easy. Jason says, I love what you said by trusting in ourselves. Thomas says, it's okay to cuss, Arica. I know. Remember when I used to do the live videos all the time? I used to cuss so much, but I don't think YouTube's a big fan of me cussing. Let me see. Yes, Thomas, start with yourself. Communication is key for every relationship to work out. I agree. Oh, that is so sweet, Antonio. He says, just know we need you, Arica. Oh, that is so, so kind. Thank you for saying that. Jason says, it's the facts of life. Being single feels lonely. I so appreciate your honesty. It does, it's like being single can be really fun and it can be life-giving. But was that saying like too much of one thing is just too much? And it's like, yes, I think there's good seasons of being single, but I think a whole lifetime of being single just creates perpetual loneliness at the end of the day. I think singleness is good for a season, but I think when we're in a relationship, we need that cathartic experience of being held, of being seen, of having someone to talk to, someone to do life with, someone to have adventures with. Like, this is what helps make us feel fully alive. Oh, I love that, Thomas. Thomas says, I don't think I'm great, but I don't hate myself like I did before. I accept myself. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Thomas. Like, you're the one that's doing the work. I just provide guidance, but you're the one that's actually making this work for you. And I love that. I love that. I love that transparency. I think that sometimes we go too far in the pendulum. It's like either I hate myself, I'm angry at myself, or oh my God, I'm just so great. And sometimes that's just not a person's experience. Sometimes they're just right in the middle and they're like, I don't hate myself, but I'm not like crazy about myself. I'm just like, I'm making progress. And that's what we can, that's loving ourselves to go, hey, I'm putting one foot in front of the next, and it's the best that I can do. I'm just trying to thank you, Manis, for being here. It's so sweet. Ron says, you don't know what you're missing till you get into another good relationship. I agree with that. I completely agree with that. I remember being in, as I shared earlier, a very difficult relationship. And then the relationship that I got into afterwards was just very fun and very sweet and a joyful experience. And it was just like, it was just night and day. And you need those good experiences to really motivate your heart. Um, well, guys, listen, I'm so glad that you guys came here. This was not like one of those fun live videos, but it's a necessary one, right? It's an honest one. I really want to empower you guys and equip you to not feel like, you know, you're the victim in life and that bad relationship, you know, that person was just horrible. Like, yeah, maybe they were horrible, but also asking yourself, like, why did you choose to stay? And how do you start trusting yourself? And the first thing you got to do is just be honest with yourself. A lot of people say, oh, well, you got to forgive yourself. Well, you can't forgive something that you're not being honest about. So first you got to be honest with yourself. Then you got to offer yourself some compassion and go, okay, I see your reason for staying. It made sense in the time. Wasn't your best move. Let's just be honest. It wasn't your best decision, but you did it. It's over, and now you know better. So guys, I love you so much. We have another live coming this Thursday, and we have a new video coming out tomorrow. So I'm so excited for you guys to see that video. Thank you for being here. I love you guys so, so much. And I will see all of you this Thursday. Thank you again, Penguin, for the super chat. And yes, tomorrow's video is the 4 stages after a breakup. How fun. I mean, we are just killing it with the fun topics on my channel. I love you guys. I'll see you on Thursday. Bye, guys.